Let's start with a dual Ukrainian Air Force Su-24 Fencer takeoff. Ukraine's Su-24 fleet is the launch platform for one of the country's most potent long-range strike assets, the Franco-British Scalp-Pi Storm Shadow air-launched cruise missile. Russian telegram channels report a drone attack on Taman oil refinery in Krasnodar region of Russia this morning. The fact that Russia is classifying its fuel data indicates that Ukraine's strikes are having the desired impact. The Russian Ministry of Energy has designated fuel production statistics as a state secret, leading to their exclusion from the weekly fuel data provided by Rostat. It can be inferred that the damage to the fuel infrastructure is having a significant impact. The increasing lack of transparency in the economic data released by Rostat is making it challenging to make accurate calculations for indicators like GDP. Ukraine is expected to persist with its drone strikes on Russian energy infrastructure, while the West should strengthen its sanctions to minimize opportunities for circumvention and maximize their impact.
Супер. Ну то уебал. Мимо уебал. Да. За резиком упал, да.
Like a night of the living dead, the hangover from Putin's nationwide genocidal frenzy in Russia is setting in nicely. After months of free reign to drunkenly loot, torture, and kill in Ukraine, the monsters are returning home.
Долбоёб, блядь.
Don't throw stones when you live in a glass house. You are carrying out an unprovoked war in Ukraine against the people of Ukraine, and yet you speak here about peace? U.S. Ambassador in the UN Linda Thomas-Greenfield said to the Russian envoy during a Security Council meeting on Syria. Thank you, Linda. Russian hypocrisy in the Security Council and elsewhere is pervasive. It poisons every body it's allowed to spread in. It must be stopped.
And let me say to my Russian colleague, don't throw stones when you live in a glass house. You are carrying out an unprovoked war in Ukraine against the people of Ukraine, and yet you speak here about peace. It is a clear reflection of your commitment or lack thereof and your humanitarian concerns. And finally, I really want to ask about your commitment to Syria. What did you contribute to Syria's humanitarian needs or to Syria's recovery needs that you speak so strongly about? So let's not talk about hypocrisy in this room. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Antony Blinken said that the U.S. could adapt and adjust its position on Western weapon strikes against targets on Russian territory. Another hallmark of our support for Ukraine over these now more than 2 years has been to adapt. As the conditions have changed, as the battlefield has changed, as what Russia does has changed in terms of how it's pursuing its aggression, escalation, we've adapted and adjusted too. And I'm confident we'll continue to do that, Sec Blinken said at a joint press conference with Moldovan President Maia Sandu. When asked by a reporter whether Blinken's words meant that America could support Ukraine's attacks inside Russia, he replied, "Adapt and adjust means just that."
When it comes to the Russian offensive in the northeast, directed at Kharkiv, taking advantage in part of the fact that the supplemental budget request the President made was so long delayed in its passage by our Congress. But happily now, that budget request was passed. And not only was it passed, the actual arms, equipment, support that comes with it is on the move and being delivered to Ukrainians. And we're seeing that have a real effect, including in stabilizing the front and in clearly denying Putin what he was after, which was to try to take Kharkiv, to create, at the very least, massive flight from the city. We do not see that happening. On the contrary, I think what we see, again, is a stabilization of the front and a failure in terms of Putin's objectives if it comes to taking Kharkiv or causing the flight of its citizens. And as we look forward to the weeks ahead, and the months ahead. We now have 32 countries that have either completed or will soon complete bilateral security agreements with Ukraine. And that will help ensure over an extensive period of time that Ukraine can develop a future force that can effectively deter aggression or deal with it if it comes anyway. And you will see those come to conclusion in the coming weeks. We're heading to the NATO summit in the United States, where, without getting into the details, and I'll be going to the foreign ministers meeting to help further prepare for that summit, I think you'll see very strong deliverables, as we would call them, for Ukraine in terms of its further integration with NATO. You're seeing on the battlefield the effect of different weapon systems that we and others have provided to Ukraine. We're working hard as well to make sure that we can find ways to access the sovereign assets of Russia that are now frozen primarily in Europe. And there again, I anticipate that in the coming weeks and months, certainly by the G7, we'll see further steps in that direction. We are working hard to deliver more air defenses to Ukraine, and I'm confident we'll see progress in that area as well. It's a long way of saying that in the coming weeks, in the coming months, I think you're only going to see greater resilience coming from Ukrainians and all those who support Ukraine. And if you project out over the next period of time, we are on the path to help ensure that Ukraine is a success, a country that stands strongly on its own feet, militarily, economically, democratically. And that's the ultimate rebuke to Mr. Putin. And it also tells him very clearly that he cannot and will not outlast Ukraine, outlast Ukraine's supporters. So I think that's a reality, a trajectory that people should have well in mind, and that should give them real confidence in the future. And again, the support that I see and that will manifest itself among so many countries for Ukraine remains strong, remains resolute, matched only, or maybe even surpassed only, by the resolve of the Ukrainian people themselves. We're committed to Ukraine succeeding as a country. We're committed to Ukraine winning the war, and I think we've shown that through the support that we've provided and many other countries have provided. We haven't encouraged or enabled strikes outside of Ukraine, but Ukraine, as I've said before, has to make its own decisions about the best way to effectively defend itself. We're going to make sure that it has the equipment it needs to do that. And another hallmark of our support for Ukraine over these now more than 2 years has been to adapt. As the conditions have changed, as the battlefield has changed, as what Russia does has changed in terms of how it's pursuing its aggression, escalation, we've adapted and adjusted too, and I'm confident we'll continue to do that.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you want to support Warthog Defense, please become our member and get early access to new videos, exclusive members-only videos, and become administrator in comment section. The membership link is in the description.
Rescues every day. We had a guy last week at 6 rescues in 6 days. You know, he's doing the job every day.